today we have a very short topic, Java array. Okay, and very simple concept as well. So we are going to talk about what is and why array, and we'll talk about how you can declare an array, meaning how you can declare a type of an array. And then we are going to talk about how you can create array object. It's called the instantiation of an object. And we are going to learn how to access an element of an array. And we also learn how to find out the length of an array and also multi-dimension array. It's pretty straightforward concepts. Slide number 3, what is and why array? Slide number 4 is basically telling why we want to have a concept of an array. If you have to declare and instantiate multiple instances of the same type like this, in this case we declare number 1, number 2, and number 3 all same type, and we have to initialize them all, and if you want to actually manipulate all this individually, that's a little bit of tedious work. So we'd like to use array. So array, you can think of it, let me actually move on to the next slide. So the reason why we want to use an array is rather obvious. Okay, so pretty much all programming language, including Java, of course, has a concept of an array. So you can think of an array is, let's say, multiple data items of the same data type or similar data type. By similar, I'm talking about, let's say, subtype and things like that. For now, you can think of same data type. So in this case, we could create a number array in which it has 3 elements in its array. So let's see example of how to declare an array. By declaring, I'm talking about declaring the type of an array. So let's see how we can do that. So you can actually declare an array in 2 different syntax. So you can either use this syntax or this syntax. So you can have the square brackets right after the type or right after the variable. So here, basically, I'm declaring the name of an array is ages, and the type of that array is int. Let me make sure that I'm actually seeing the questions. No slide yet. Let's see. Oh, okay. So, all right. Hopefully you can see the slide. Sorry about that. I didn't actually see your questions. Yeah. So we are slide 7. Let me see. How many of you didn't see the slide from? Let's say. Hold a second. Let me just get the questions. Okay, so some people can see the slide. Okay, good. So everybody can see the slide. How about you, Kathy? Okay, sorry about that. Somehow, yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be on, so I'm not sure why some of you didn't actually see the slide. Okay, good. So it looks like everybody is seeing the slide. Okay, so you didn't miss that much actually, so let's actually move on to from slide 7. Everybody can see the slide 7? Good, okay. All right, my apology if you didn't see the slide. Okay, let me just get the questions dialog box open so that I can see what you are telling me. Okay, so there are 2 different ways that you can declare an array. So here you can declare either having square bracket right after the type or right after the variable. Okay, so that's for declaration, meaning you basically specify the name of an array and type of it. Now, you have not created an instance of that array yet. So that's next. Slide number 8, slide number 9. So, we'll talk about the concept of instantiation of an object later on in detail when we learn class and object. In Java, when we say instantiation, that means we are creating an object instance. So the also concept of constructor, since it's not that much relevant in this particular presentation, we'll actually move on. Constructor, you can think of, is a method that could be used to create an object instance. But if you don't understand the concept of constructor, so don't worry about it. We'll actually talk about it in detail later on. Slide number 10. So this is how you are going to create an object instance, array object instance. So I use the term either object or object instance. Those two terms are the same thing. So this one is the declaration. As I said before, declaration is specifying the name of an array, variable, and the type of it. Now, the way that you are going to create an object, array object instance, is basically you say new, and then you specify the name of the type, and then you're going to specify the size of that array. So here, basically I'm saying is, I'm going to create an array of int type of 100 in size, and then I'm assigning that object to a variable called ages. Okay, and you can actually create an object and assign it in a single line like this. Okay. Slide number 11 basically shows you what happens. So here we created array object instance. Okay, and you can see these 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, those are indexes, and we're going to learn index in a few minutes. So basically we created array of int type of length is 100, and then I'm assigning that object instance a variable, so this variable points to that array object. Okay, another way that you can create an array object instance is by using the initialization data like this. Okay, so basically here what I'm saying is that I'm creating int array of size of 5, and I'm also initializing the value of that array, and then I'm assigning that object instance to a variable called array. So it's pointing to this array. Again, pretty straightforward concept. Question from Paul. Do you always have to know how big your array is going to be? Can you create an array of unknown size? This is a very good question. One of the limitations of array is that it's not automatically, the size is fixed, meaning you cannot actually allow the array to be automatically resizing itself. So when we are learning collection, you are going to use what is called the array list, and array list will actually increase the size depending on the need. It will dynamically shrink itself or stretch itself to accommodate the number of entries or items or elements. Okay, so in that sense, array list is more popular than array, mainly because array, the size is fixed. So you cannot create array object of unknown size. Okay, moving forward, slide number 13. So these are various examples of how to create array object instance. So here we created array object instance of size 4 of Boolean type. Here we created double type of array with 4 items initialized, and this is a string array of let's say 7 items, 7 elements, so size is 7. Okay, moving forward, slide number 14. Okay, so once you created an array object, and then And if you initialize the values into those items, those elements, then you can access array element by using index. So let's see how we can do this. So we are going to use an index starting from 0. So the first item of the array has index of 0. Okay, so if you have, let's say, 100 the items in your array, the index is going to start from 0 to 99. Okay, so here is a way that you can access particular element of an array. So you are going to specify the value of index. So when I use ages and a square bracket 0, that means I'm accessing the first element of that array. So here I am assigning value 10 to that element. And here I'm displaying the value of the 99th, actually 100th in this case, 100th element of ages array. Now, if you created an array of number type, the value of each item will be initialized to 0. Okay, so if it is a number type, like int or double and things like that, it is automatically set to 0. However, if you are creating an array of object instances, such as a string, it is set to what is called the null. So we had discussed a little bit on the concept of null. You can think of null is like a 0 for object. Okay, so in the case of numbers, you have a 0, right? And in the case of object, there is a concept of null. And you can have particular object's instance variable to have a null. That means if you're assigning null, that means it's basically nothing. So for string array, it's not going to be blank. It's not going to be empty string. I mean, this empty string is, in fact, it's not null. Okay, it's genuine string, doesn't have anything, but it is actually string object. A blank, it's the same thing. If you have a blank inside, you have in fact blank characters, right? So that's actually a non-null string, and this is also non-null string. Okay, so this is an example where we are displaying the value of each item of an array called ages. And so in this case, because when we initialized this int array called ages, they are going to be set to 0, meaning each item, each element will be set to 0. So if you print it out, it will print out all zeros. Okay, so coding guidelines. So whenever possible, you want to initialize the array like this. Okay, so this is preferred over this. Okay, but sometimes you have to initialize later on. But in general, this should be the case that you could use most of the time. Not much big deal. Slide number 20. So this is something that we talked about. So yeah, we learned index is starting from 0, right? Okay. Now this is something that Paul asked about. You cannot resize an array. Okay, so this is a constraint. So if you're creating array object, you got to know upfront what the size of that array is going to be. So this is in fact a constraint. Okay. Now, whether you want to use an array or array list. Again, we haven't talked about the array list yet. Array list is flexible array in a sense that it will increase or decrease the length of it depending on the need of it. So what to use when. The array is preferred if you know the size up front because it could be a bit more efficient than using the array list. Okay, so array list system has to figure out whether it has to increase the size or not once in a while. That could be an overhead, right? So if you know the size up front, then using array is okay. Okay, slide number 21. Array length. The way you can find out the length of an array is you specify the name of an array and then you use dot and length. Okay. So in this example, instead of saying 100 here, we can say ages.length. Okay, so this is more flexible code than using hard-coded value of 100. Okay, slide number 24. So again, use array length rather than hard-coded value. I mean, that's no-brainer. Whenever you are specifying, whenever you are using some value like this, typically it's better practice. In fact, it's always a better practice to created a constant value called the array size. So this is a symbolic value, and then use the symbolic value like this. Okay, so this is a better programming practice. So usage of hard-coded value in your code is strongly discouraged, mainly because it's hard to change that code. And if you're actually using this 1000 value in multiple times in your code, and somehow if you want to change the value later on, that's rather difficult to, so if you're actually using the symbolic value like this, then the only place that you're going to change is this line. Okay, so you are going to change the array size of 500 maybe later on, and all the other code still works fine. Okay, but if you're using hard-coded value, then you have to actually go each of those lines to change. So usage of hard-coded value like 1000 is strongly discouraged. Moving forward, slide number 25. Multi-dimensional array. So the concept is pretty much the same. So you are going to specify by multiple brackets. So let's see how we can do this. Slide number 27. So this is two-dimensional array called 2D. Okay, and here I'm initializing it. So it does have 512. You can think of rows, and then this is like 128 items on each row. So you can think of this one, let's say, two-dimension table, and this is a three-dimension array. Okay, size of 8 by 16 and 12. So you can initialize the multi-dimensional array like this. So here I am initializing the first row of this docs multi-dimensional array with this. So you can think of this one is the first column and second column, and this is a second row, and the first column, second column, things like that. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. So in order to access an item in that multi-dimensional array, you can specify the value on this array index like this. Okay, so here I'm accessing the first row and first column of that docs two-dimensional array. Okay. All right, so we learned how we can declare an array, and we learned how we create an object instance of array using new keyword, and we learned how to use how to access those elements using index. We learned how to have length value of an array. We also learned the concept of multi-dimensional array. Very straightforward. Okay, so let me go to the Handson lab. So exercise 1 is creating the int array. So we create a new project. Question from Steve. Does Java have associative array? Let's say array name. Oh, I see. So what you're saying is, so the question, this is an interesting question from Steve. So by associative array, I think this is a set theory concept. So you can say, can I say, let's say, array 1, square bracket, and specify another array variable, something like that? The answer is no. Okay. Array is relatively straightforward in Java. Okay, so we create the project, and so here we created int array of size of 10, and we just display things, and you can see the values is going to be set all zeros because they are initialized as zeros. This is two-dimensional, so we have ages, and then we have the int, the length. So you can think of number of rows is 10, and for each row there are 5 columns. Okay. So here, so what about this? So when we actually try to display the length of ages, what would be the value? So, assuming you haven't seen the result, what do you guys think? What would be the result? What is the value of ages.length? $10. Good. Excellent. Yeah, so, whether it is 10 or whether it's 50, or the captain says 49. Okay, the answer is 10. So basically it's telling you, it's actually giving you the length of the first array. Okay. Now this one, ages 1.length, because the first row itself is, the first item itself is an array. You can actually specify the length. In this case, it's going to be 5. Okay. So, so Captain was asking, why would it not be 9? The length is the size of the array. The index is going to be 0 to 9, but the length is the number of items, meaning, from 0 to 10, that means you got 10 items. Okay. So there's a difference between the length versus the last index value. So the length is always the last index value plus 1. Okay, so it's relatively straightforward. I'm going to just move on. So exercise 2 is creating array of string. So here we created array of string, and we call it days. And then we just display things. Okay. Now, one thing I want you to play around is, without initialization, okay? And then when you're trying to print it out, then you will have an exception. You will actually have what is called the null pointer exception. What that means is that you are trying to access that is not present, okay? So here we actually initialize each item of the string array with a particular string object instance, like this. So we are basically using different loop scheme, while loop, do while, and for loop. And it should actually display the same. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I expect this is a pretty short presentation, and because concept-wise it's pretty straightforward. Let me just